Hmm.
Hello, everybody. I'm Howie Hawkins. I was the Green Party and the Socialist Party candidate for president in the U.S. in 2020. And this podcast, Green Socialist Notes, is about continuing to educate and organize around the eco-socialist program that my running mate, Angela Walker, and I ran on in 2020. And today we have Frank Habineza, or Habineza, how do you pronounce
Habineza,
it?
yes. Yes,
Habineza.
Habineza. Hmm.
Okay, well, let me give an introduction to Frank. Uh, he's a member of the Rwandan parliament, and he's the presidential candidate of the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda in elections to be held this coming July 15th. Frank founded the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda in 2009, and he had intended to run in the 2010 presidential election, but the Democratic Green Party was prevented from registering. And in fact, the party's vice president was found beheaded during the campaign. So Frank went into exile for his own safety in Sweden for a couple of years, but he returned, and the party was finally registered in 2013, but it was then too late to contest the 2013 parliamentary elections. But Frank did contest the 2017 presidential election. He only received 0.5% of the vote in an election that international observers universally considered rigged. But in the 2018 parliamentary election, the Democratic Green Party is a party-list proportional system, at least for some of the seats. They passed the 5% threshold. So Frank and another Green got into the parliament. And they were the first opposition candidates to win seats in the Rwandan parliament since Paul Kagame's Rwanda Patriotic Front came to power after the 1994 genocide. So just to give a little background on the circumstances in which Frank and the Democratic Green Party are working and why what happens in Rwanda is important for us and really the whole world. Rwanda has effectively been a repressive one-party state under Paul Kagame since his Rwandan Patriotic Front militia took power in 1994. And if you look at the Human Rights Watch report, or any human rights group that's reported on Rwanda, but the Human Rights Report this year, 2024, first sentence reads, commentators, journalists, opposition activists, and others speaking out on current affairs and criticizing public policies in Rwanda continue to face abusive prosecutions, enforced disappearances, and have at times died under unexplained circumstances. And that report also notes that the Rwandan army deployed troops to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to provide direct military support for the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, who have committed unlawful killings, rapes, and other apparent war crimes. Human rights, and this is, a problem, they haven't been able to get investigators in there really since Kagame came to power, nor have many foreign journalists been given permission to go in there. And those Congo wars have claimed since 1996 an estimated 6 million lives and displaced 6 million people as refugees. It's the world's deadliest conflict since World War II. And it's a war about interethnic conflict in the aftermath of the Rwanda genocide in 1994. But it's also about control of the plentiful mineral resources of the Congo, a struggle in which many foreign powers are involved. And many of these minerals are essential for digital and renewable energy technologies. So what I'm saying is what happens in Rwanda has implications for peace, climate action, and social justice far beyond Rwanda itself. And I had the pleasure of meeting Frank at the Global Greens Conference in South Korea a year ago last June. And I'm so glad he could join us today as he's campaigning for the presidency of Rwanda. So welcome, Frank. And please start off by just telling us about your campaign and the current situation in Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to be on this show, and I was even very pleased to having seen you last year in South Korea when we had the Global Greens Congress. So nice to be on this podcast. Yeah. Well, the current situation on the elections that this week on Thursday, the National Electoral Commission announced or published a list of the provisional candidates. 90 candidates had applied, and 3 have been approved. That is the incumbent president Paul Kagame, and myself, Frank Habineza from the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda, and an independent candidate called Philip Paimana. So we have 3 candidates that have been approved provisionally, but the final confirmation will be on the 14th of June. That is next week on Thursday. So basically, we are the 3 candidates that are going to be in this race. So that's the update for the presidential elections. But this will be a general election whereby also we'll have parliamentary elections together. So people will be voting for members of parliament and as well as for the president at the same time. So our party, the Democratic Party of Rwanda, also fielded 64 candidates. And so we are finalizing the details for them also all of them to be announced next week. So that's the update on the elections.
So are you on the parliamentary list as well as presidential candidate?
No. I'm just on the presidential list. I'm not on the parliamentary list because it's not possible to stand for both, for president and for parliament, because it's what we call incompatibilities. So the 2 jobs are incompatible with each other.
So as I understand it, the assembly of the parliament, there's an assembly and a senate. 53 of the 80 deputies are elected by proportional representation. Yeah. And the others seem to be appointed by kind of electoral college kind of arrangements where the government has a lot of influence. And the Senate seems to be elected that way too. Is that right?
The parliament has 80 seats. So out of 80 seats, 53 are elected by the universal suffrage, by the population. That's from the political parties. Then 24 seats are reserved for women, and they're elected by electoral colleges in the provinces where they come from. And then the 2 seats are for the youth. They're elected by the National Youth Council. That's for 1 boy and 1 girl. And then there's 1 seat for the people with disabilities, also selected by the Disability Council. So the only seats where people are involved is the 53 seats for political parties. For the Senate, they have 26 seats, and out of the 26, 12 are elected through electoral colleges in the provinces, and 8 are appointed by the president, and 4 are elected from the political parties forum, and 1 comes from the 2 come from academic institutions, the private universities and the public universities. So that makes them the 26.
So with just 2 Greens in the assembly since 2018, how have you been able to function? What have you been able to do? What are the difficulties you've run into being in the Rwandan parliament?
Maybe I'll just add on that we got another seat in the Senate in 2019. So we got one of our members elected through the political parties forum. So we have 3 parliamentarians, 1 senator and 2 members of parliament in the chamber of deputies, which is like the House of Representatives in America. So it's a tough job to work when we're very sure like that, but we have had a very big influence because we have a different message from them, and we're the main opposition party in the parliament. So we've been able to put forward our message from our manifesto. But when you enter parliament, you're not supposed to talk much about the party because you become a national MP. Because with the proportional representation, you are voted by the whole country. So that you are not having any constituency, you are voted by the whole country. So because of that, we become national MP. And you have to be careful not to mention the political party. But we do mention our party line or our party message through whatever we speak. So we've been able to push our message, whereby I can proudly say that over 70% of our manifesto has been achieved, which is a very big achievement.
So talk about what's in your manifesto for this election. What are the issues?
For this manifesto, we are not at liberty to mention it because the election campaigns will start on the 22nd of June. So that's when we start talking about the new manifesto. But maybe I'll give a few highlights so that I don't be say that I'm campaigning before the campaign start.
Okay.
Um, so I don't want to be against the law. Yeah. So we are still standing for democracy. We want to have more freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of the media. So we stand first is to make sure that for food security, whereby the people of Rwanda should have enough food on the table. Because Rwanda is still a country whereby we are importing most of our foodstuffs from countries like as far as India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Tanzania, Zambia. So we want to be independent, that we can have our own food, that we are not going to be dependent on foodstuffs from other countries. And so make sure that every person in the country can be able to have food. We still have situations where people eat once a day in Rwanda, and we still have high levels of poverty. As you know, that the poverty rate here is still, I think, over 50%. Yeah. So I mean, people cannot have $1 a day. So we have many millions of people who cannot afford to buy sugar. Millions of people who struggle to get $1 or $1.50 a day. So it's such a big challenge. So we have to improve our economy by creating more employment opportunities, especially for the young people. That's where we can build a strong economy, whereby we also put what we call green economy. But we're going to focus more on what we call agro-processing industries, where we establish agro-processing industries in every sector. That's like a small locality, like a ward. I think we have wards in America. Yeah, like that, so that every agglomerations of villages can have a small factory there that can process what they produce. That way, we have over 400 sectors in the country. If we do that, then people have jobs, either those who are educated and those who are not educated can have something to do. So this will help to improve our economy. We want to put more focus on sustainable agriculture, which we call green agriculture as well, that we produce more foodstuffs without using chemical fertilizers and without using genetically modified organisms. Because Rwanda has approved a new law on GMOs, and our party is against that. I voted against this in parliament recently. So we don't support that. So we want to see that we can still have fresh foods without free from GMOs, but also make sure that we use organic manure instead of using chemical fertilizers. So this is part of our green agriculture. Then going to other domains, we're talking about security. We have to improve our security because Rwanda is in the middle of enemy countries, that the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has declared to wage war on Rwanda and has even sent in military planes in Rwandan airspace last year. So we're already on the threat of being attacked by Congo. So we have to put some efforts to improve our security. But also we have problems with our southern neighbor, Burundi, which has closed its borders now with Rwanda. So which is a big threat to us, even stopping movement of people and goods and causing unemployment and bad economic regress because of what is happening. So that's something that we need to do as well to improve our relations, that countries' relations should not depend, borders should not be crossed just because there's something wrong going on between politicians. So what happens between politicians should not affect the whole population. So this is what we need to do on that. And we also have a strong program for the media because we believe in media freedom, and that the Rwanda media is very not strong enough because they don't have financial means to function. So we believe that we are going to create more opportunities for the media, private media, to function by making sure that the public broadcaster should stop doing advertisements or commercials. I would call it in the US, we call them commercials. Because the public broadcaster now is the one which is having all the commercials, and yet it has money from the taxpayers. So we want to give all these commercials to the private media, and then create a special budget for the public broadcaster, Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, which is a national TV and TV Rwanda, Lady Rwanda, so that we can create a special fund that whereby 80 person can contribute something small, and then there will be a special account for them, the national bank, that can fund the national broadcaster, so that they stop being involved in business. this will help to strengthen the private media. We also plan to have a media development fund, which can help also to fund the private media, where they can get some loans on free on small interest rates here. So these are some of the few things I can mention because I've mentioned them when I was submitting my presidential candidature. So I think I can really talk about them as well. It's not a crime. Yeah, but I would say that we have achieved a lot in the past. If you wish, I can mention a little bit about our past manifesto, whereby we are proud to say that we what signature points in the last manifesto, whereby we wanted to improve our education. And we said that to improve our education, we need to increase our teachers' salaries. The teachers were so poorly paid, like they were getting $20 a month, which was really nothing. So we wanted 100% increase at least. And finally, the government accepted to increase the salary by 66%. So that was at least an achievement. But also, I say that for the children to be able to study, they need to eat some hot meals because they were having nothing to eat at school, and they were very hungry, and the hungry stomach cannot get anything in their head. So finally, I promised that I will give them something to eat, and government accepted, finally put it into the law that all private schools and the public schools must provide a hot meal, and the government has put up a budget for that, and parents are encouraged to contribute to that. So that's another achievement from our manifesto. We have also, of course, campaigned for the military personnel to increase their salaries, which has been done. And we have also put up other policies to have some housing for the military personnel, which the government is constrained to do. I also promised to put up a satellite in the sky, and the Rwandan government has collaborated with Japan. They have put up a satellite in the sky, and say that there are a lot of good things that have happened, but mostly also the land policy, whereby we wanted land taxation was so high. Our party is against high taxation. So we're against all the taxes, which were so high, so many taxes. So we were promised to decrease all the taxes. And finally, some taxes have been decreased. But most important was the land tax, because we have a land leasehold policy here, whereby we lease our land from the government, and we lease the land and then we pay high taxes. So I promised to first scrap the tax, but it was not possible. Then I said that I would decrease it when I was campaigning for parliament. So finally, I took a private member's bill to parliament to decrease the land tax, and I was proposed to decrease it from 300 francs to 100 francs. And then the parliament asked me to put another bill that will, another clause which will show that where government will get money. So we collaborated with other institutions, especially the Ministry of Finance. Finally, the Ministry of Finance, they took my law, made theirs, and then they brought a new law which decreased the land tax from 300 to 80. So my proposal was to 100, so they went as low as 80, which was a big achievement. Also, ownership, the leasehold was on 20 years leasehold. It was very unfortunate that 20 years, you only own that land for 20 years. So I said that we need to have full ownership, maybe not lease from the state, because the land from our forefathers. Finally, the government accepted to increase this leasehold from 20 years to 99 years renewable, and also they accepted full ownership. So basically, I would say that these are some of the things we campaigned so dearly in the last elections, which have been achieved, and there are many others that have been achieved. So I would say that we are going to this election with pride and with happiness that we have been able to achieve something, and that we are not a party that lies. We are the party which tells people something and is done. Because there's a tendency in Africa where politicians make promises and they don't deliver them. So we are a party that delivers. We are not a party that lies people. So this is the key message we're taking back into this campaign.
We put in the chat at 311 the link to the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda's website. And on there, you can see this manifesto from the last election that Frank was talking about, in different statements and a lot of things about the party. Now, some of that is in the native language to Rwanda, which I can't pronounce off the top of my head. It starts with a K. What is it?
But we also have in English, I think.
Yeah. Some of the posts are in English, but some are in the other language. But I found using Google Translate it,
Hmm.
it you know, it took me a while to figure out what language it was, but it starts with a K.
Kinyarwanda. It's a Kinyarwanda language. That's the native language of
That's
Rwanda.
right. So you can read the whole website, even the parts that are in that language. Yeah, it just got posted again, the website, and so there's also an article we'll post here shortly that was in AFP, the French press agency, about this campaign. So that'll just give you some more background about it. Um, so why don't you talk about the environmental problems in Rwanda and the impact of climate change?
Climate change, yeah. Well, climate change is a reality that we live in. And last year, we had floods in the western part of Rwanda, and as well as in the northern Rwanda. So we lost over 150 people, and over 3,000 houses were destroyed. And so a lot of things, property, uh, people's lives and land was destroyed. This is the real life we live in. This is just last year. So if that's in the north and west, but also in the eastern part of the country, we have uh, drought, a lot of drought every year, and you see that nothing much is done. Um, but anyway, I've said that as a party, we have been campaigning more for sustainable land use policy, making sure that we protect our soil, what we call soil erosion, by planting more trees to make sure that when the rain rains so heavily that the soil can be, all of the soil cannot run into the rivers. So we promoted what we call progressive terracing, whereby that people do terraces using agroforestry trees, which can stop the water runoff. So some of the things that we promote, but also we try to also promote rainwater harvesting. That if it rains so heavily, people should be able to have systems in their houses which can catch some of this water, so that all the water does not end up into uh, the gardens or elsewhere. So it's a continuous struggle, and we carried out a study 2 years ago on our biggest basin, river basin, whereby we found out that we have a lot of water pollution, which comes from the industries around, from the garages, there's a big landfill, not landfill, it's West dump site here in Kigali. We don't have a landfill in Kigali, it's a dump site. So all the things are dumped and they end up into the groundwater and contaminates our water. And so we proposed some policies on that, and we also did some cleaning activities on that, and the city of Kigali also went into overdrive to solve those problems. So I would say that we're doing that as well.
Well, one of the things that's got a lot of attention in the media here related to Rwanda is this proposal by the UK that apparently Kagame agreed to send immigrants to the UK to Rwanda. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, our party has been in opposition or opposed to that from the beginning. So we had, when it was first announced, we said that we cannot accept this because we believe that we first of all, our party is not against refugees. We agree that we can receive refugees who want to come to stay in Rwanda. That one, we agree with that. But not those who do not want to come to Rwanda. Those who chose to go to another country, let's say the UK or Germany or elsewhere, they are not our responsibility. They are those countries' responsibility. But those who choose to come to Rwanda, we welcome them. So we said these people went to the UK, and they are not Rwanda's responsibility, the UK's responsibility. And then Rwanda is not a bigger country than the UK. And Rwanda is not richer than the UK. UK is a strong economy than Rwanda. So we said that Rwanda is not the one who can help the UK. So UK is trying to give money to Rwanda to take over their problems. So we said that this is also not right because like people are for sale. It's like modern slavery. Why do you have to give money to others to take care of your problems, especially if you're talking about people? It's like they're selling them to Rwanda. So this is all wrong. And then I got about their human rights. These people, it's an abuse of their fundamental human right because they never chose to come to this country. They wanted to be UK because UK has more opportunities for them than Rwanda. So if you send them to Africa, to Rwanda, it's against their human rights. So with all that and more other reasons, we are opposed to that policy. And I've voted against it in Parliament 3 times in Parliament, and my colleague in the Senate also voted against it in the Senate. So we are the 2 parliamentarians in the Chamber of Deputies, we voted against it, and our Senate also voted against it. So that has been our topical message. It has hung on for 2 years, but we've stood our ground.
So we've had some comment or questions in the chat. Maybe we could get those posted and Frank can respond. Here we go. Frankie Lee, what are the main problems that need fixing in Rwanda?
What are the main problems? What?
The main problems that need fixing.
Yeah, those issues that I mentioned, issue of food, because it's a big problem that if you have a part of the population which eat once a day, that's a very big problem. So we as a party, especially the Democratic Green Party, we are for democracy, but also for green. We believe in the sanctity of human life. So people, if they don't have food, they don't have life. They have many dangers to sickness and so on. So, as I mentioned, that our country is dependent more on food imports from other countries. So we need to stop those imports to make sure that we have enough food. We can grow our food more, or we're not against trade, international trade, but we need to be sufficient in our own means, so that we can import something small, but not everything. So this is the main challenge, first one. But the biggest challenge is also issues of democracy, because we still have issues of freedom of expression in Rwanda and freedom of speech in Rwanda. People still fear to express themselves freely, and want to improve on that as well, so that people can freely express their ideas, can freely go into the political parties they wish, and so on. So you'll find that people go into political parties like ours and they face challenges, and when they are in the ruling party, they are comfortable. So this is a challenge as well in Rwanda. So we want to improve on that, that people are free to go into whatever party they want, and to make sure that journalists also have a better environment. The media, as I mentioned, that the environment is not so good for the media in Rwanda, that you find that the medias that are not pro-government, it's hard for them to survive. So that's why we need to establish a mechanism whereby that the state broadcaster should stop doing commercials or business and just depend on the taxpayers' money. I think it would be enough. So those are some of the issues that I've mentioned, but maybe there will be more. But the security challenge is high, as I mentioned. That we have constant attacks from Congo, and there are also running rebels in Congo, those who committed genocide in 1994 against the Tutsi. So that's another big threat that we have as a country. So we have external threats, also have internal threats as well.
Scout Trooper 164 asks, Frank, what is East Africa like? Does Rwanda have to deal with Russian influence or something? Asking because I pay close attention to the Russo-Ukrainian war.
Yes, the Russia influence is something very big because Rwanda adopted to start a nuclear power plant here, and Russia was the one to support that. So there's a big Russian company called Lazatom, I think, which signed up an agreement with Rwanda to build a nuclear center here. My party opposed that because we're against nuclear energy. We believe that we can be more sustainable if we have renewable energy. So now, so that's been some of the influences that Russia has put in here to make sure that they can have friends. But also in the East Africa, as mentioned, in East Africa, we have countries which are openly supporting Russia, like some military generals in Uganda. They have been open on supporting Russia. And so Russia has a big influence here, but Ukraine is also not stupid, because Ukraine now has opened up an embassy in Rwanda. So they are also very shrewd politicians. They are coming here to counter the Russian influence here.
Wow. I saw your statement on your website against nuclear power, but I didn't realize Russia's actually proposing to export nuclear power
Yeah,
to
it is Russia.
Rwanda.
It is Russia building that in Rwanda. Yeah. But now, when the war went so bad, now the government paused down. Now they are trying to build it with the support of Germany and the US. But Russia was the first one, which we ratified actually that agreement in Parliament. The Russian deal was approved by Parliament
So now you said the US and who? Germany are trying
and
to
Germany. They're trying
trying
now
to
to take over from Russia. Yes.
I mean, in the face of climate change, they say it's carbon-free power, but all the money spent on nuclear power, if it was spent on solar and wind and other renewables, would create more power. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
the biggest challenge with nuclear is that even the nuclear waste, it is so difficult to know where to put it, and then what they need to have uranium and other things very expensive to get, and then if there's risk of an accident, our country is too small to contain that the whole population will be dead. You've seen what happened in Fukushima, and you've seen what happened in Chernobyl in Ukraine, which was former USSR. And I had a chance to live in Sweden, and people told me that what happened in Chernobyl affected the people in Sweden, which is like over 4,000 miles away. So this is children in Sweden used to be born without hands, without heads, or without what, because of the nuclear disaster that happened in Ukraine long time ago. So these impacts, like what happened in Fukushima in Japan, that say that it will cost billions of dollars to recover. So we don't have that. Our budget even is not that big that if we have a nuclear disaster, we cannot take care. So I think that this is a very wrong process to have. But also, what's still getting it from Russia is also not good.
wow. Here's another question. Amy L. Sachs, welcome, Frank. I wonder if it is anti-immigrant sentiment, if there is anti-immigrant sentiment in Rwanda as we have here in the United States, which is exploited by both parties here.
Basically not. Rwandan people, they are not anti-migrant because we have a lot of refugees from Congo, 100,000, over 100,000 refugees from Congo, they're here. We have over 80,000 refugees from Burundi are here. We have others who come from different, even we have from Afghanistan, they chose to come, some are here. So we are not, our country does not have those anti-migrant sentiments. But we as a party, we are against those who are going to come from UK, because that is not our responsibility. If those who choose to come from us, as I said, those who come from Afghanistan or wherever, we don't mind, because they've chosen Rwanda as their destination. Some they come, they get processed, and they continue to other countries, which is okay. But we don't want to be a dump site whereby other countries refuse the refugees or migrants and they send them to Rwanda. I think that would be wrong.
Scout Trooper 164. How will the Green Party in Rwanda influence Africa or perhaps the rest of the world? Will it grant a stronger voice?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing, and we have been influencing not just Rwanda, but we've been also able to influence in East Africa, and we also have an African Green Federation, where we are also a member of the Green Coalition in Africa. We also put our voice. So I think that, but also our party is also working very strongly with international media and local media. So we always send our message, which influences not just on Rwanda, but also on international level. But it's not easy, because there are other people who are against our party. There are others who are very, very extremist people. Those who don't believe in peace, who don't believe in democracy, want to fight. And those who have guns want to fight from Congo to top over the government, to commit another genocide. So we still have challenges like that. But I mean, the struggle continues.
Another question from Scout Trooper 164. Frank, I'm not largely aware of international culture. Will the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda try to unite all Africans to help improve Africa, or however it will assist Rwanda?
Well, our first priority is to assist Rwanda because we're a political party registered in Rwanda. That's our first priority, to help the people of Rwanda. If we achieve that, then we, of course, will also move on. Right now, I'm also president of the East African Greens Federation, so I still have a mandate to help countries in East Africa also to improve. That is Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, and then we also now recently have Somalia and other countries joining in, South Sudan and Ethiopia. So I think that that's another mandate that I have, but my main responsibility is first to support, to unite all the people of Rwanda, to improve the Rwandan economy, and then I will extend. We hopefully, as chance comes, we shall improve not only East Africa, but also go up to the African level.
I noticed on your website a quote from Kwame Nkrumah, who's a famous Pan-Africanist and had that aspiration. So I think that underscores what you just said.
Yes, that's correct. I also went to visit his mausoleum in Ghana, and I was really very impressed by his work. And I've also done to Gandhi in India. Gandhi is also, I would call him one of my heroes. I liked what Gandhi did in liberating India from colonialism, where he used non-violence. So I'm a strong believer in non-violence, and I try to do it here because this country of Rwanda has suffered a lot of violence. So I believe that we can do politics in a non-violent manner. So I'm with Gandhi, I'm with Nkrumah, yeah, and I sometimes extend to also like Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela, yes.
Mm.
They just had an election in South Africa. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, the ANC, they had the Freedom Charter, and it wasn't fully implemented, and it kind of went toward a neoliberal economic dispensation rather than what the Freedom Charter called for. And they seem to have paid for it in the last election.
Yeah, the ANC in South Africa has had a lot of challenges, and I think the elections have shown that people need to have another form of government because people do not have the full confidence of the ANC in government as they used to have. So right now they are trying to have negotiations to form a government of national unity. Hopefully, if that works, then to help the people to move forward.
Okay, we have a question from Ashley R. Frank, looking at the numbers on various sources that I posted earlier in the chat, and I think those were from Wikipedia, it would seem that Rwanda is possibly on the verge of another fascist genocide. And then she says, as is the US, referencing Project 2025, which is the Heritage Foundation's blueprint for Donald Trump if he gets elected president.
Well, we are concerned with our security. As I mentioned, that Congo and Burundi have declared to attack Rwanda and remove the president. If that happens, then that can cause a big trouble to us. I mean, because we as a party, we believe in democratic transition. We don't believe in violence. We don't believe where people have to fight to remove someone by military, because that would cause more death. So if what Congo and Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi have said, they will attack Rwanda, if that happens, then of course we are on a big threat. But our security forces, they are much aware, they are on the guard. We hope that they will be able to protect us.
So I see a comment in the chat about Ghana having just says absolutely demolished LGBTQ rights. Talk about the situation for those folks in Rwanda in terms of what the law is and in terms of society.
Well, they have challenges in Rwanda because our culture does not tolerate people, the LGBT people, the culture, and because of the churches here, the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, they don't support that. So those people, they live sometimes a life of their own, sometimes in fear. They cannot be so much open. Sometimes they lose their jobs when they come out. So it's a challenge, and they don't have enough medical services. I have posed this issue in Parliament because we have the Rwanda Biomedical Center, which is under the Ministry of Health, that takes care of health concerns. So it does not recognize the LGBTQ, all of them. It only recognizes what they call MSM. MSM is what they think they put into their program. That's men sleeping with men, but they don't recognize that they're also women or others. So I've said that why do you only consider men sleeping with men, but why don't you consider other categories to provide with them medical services? So they don't recognize that. So I've questioned that to the Minister of Health in Parliament, and I've asked them to revise their policy. And I've also visited the LGBTQ headquarters. They have a center called Isange Center. I went there and got some ideas of what they need. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. They wanted to do a Pride festival in Rwanda, but it was very difficult for them to get permission. They have challenges, but I mean, it's not also a popular thing to talk about their issues so much in public because it can make you lose votes. So we try to support them, but also do it wisely.
And one thing I noticed in my reading is that Rwanda does not criminalize LGBT people
Yeah.
like some nearby states like Uganda or
Mm.
what was just referenced in Ghana.
Mm.
But it's a social problem still, as you just laid
Yeah.
out.
Mm. Legally, it's not a crime for legally. Of course, our constitution recognizes marriage between man and woman, so they cannot legally get married here. But other than that, um, sorry, my phone was ringing. Other than that, I would say that this problem is more social, cultural, and religious problem than legal. But legal, as I mentioned, that the Ministry of Health, which is in charge of taking care of these issues, does not recognize other categories. They only recognize what they call MSM, as I mentioned.
So one of the things I noticed reading through your website is, a concern with poverty and also with the tax system. In your last manifesto, you called for progressive taxation. And I know you
Yeah.
talked about the land tax earlier, but why don't you talk about your ideas about how to use the tax system to help alleviate poverty and make the society more equitable?
Yeah, well, we were saying that progressive taxation, that people should be taxed according to their levels, because we used to have taxes, so many taxes uh, that like poor people would suffer more. So we say that maybe it would be better to tax more those who have more resources than making flat taxes for everyone. And the taxes used to be in a manner that you find that one item is taxed like 10 times. Let me say, like a tree. They will tax a tree, they will tax charcoal coming from the tree, they will tax the timber from the tree, everything is taxed coming from. So we said, why can't it be one tax on the tree? On tree like wood, we put up a wood tax, other than putting tax on every even byproducts of the wood. So basically, this is one of the things we have been mentioning, that taxes have to be harmonized and to be also progressive, because traders and people were suffering. Then there also used to be in the local markets. We have local markets. I don't know if you have local markets in the US. I forget that. So where people come with the fresh foods from their gardens, they come with their chicken, with their goats and cow and what to sell directly in the market. And then at the entrance of the market, someone will be there to tax anything that enters into the market. And this is fresh banana coming from the garden, and someone just wants to sell that, to maybe to be able to buy some sugar for the children or some sort to whatever, or some clothes and so on. And they tax you. And when you enter the market, you may not find a buyer. Then you have to take it back home whenever they pay the tax. So this with the campaign, this tax, and finally the government accepted to scrap this tax because it was so unreasonable. Someone comes with a chicken in the market, and sometimes there's no buyer, but you have paid the tax at the entrance. So yeah, but now government changes the name. Sometimes they call them levies, not taxes. So they say, oh, it's not a tax, it's a levy. Oh, it's not. But say still, it's money coming. You're getting money from the people. So we are against all these types of taxes. We say, well, it's okay to have to pay taxes, but people should be happy to pay taxes, because if you make so much taxes, people will get tired. And we have tax refugees, actually. People have run away from this country to Zambia, to Uganda, because they could not afford to do business here. And when they get back to Uganda, to Tanzania, or to Zambia, they do better businesses. So I've had a chance to interact with those people in those countries. The Rwandan people escaped Rwanda and became tax refugees in other countries. So this one of the reasons that we were studying. And well, something has been done. We would not shout for nothing, because there have been some revisions and some taxes have been scrapped here.
Yeah, we do have something similar to what you're calling local markets. We call them farmers markets. And they tend not to have, live animals like chickens, but the products, dairy products, produce, maple syrup, wine, but they don't call it a tax, but you got to pay to have a stall in the farmers market. So it's a fee. And in fact, when we were petitioning to get our presidential candidate on the ballot in New York State, in the United States, we have 51 jurisdictions, and you got to get ballot petitions in each one of them. And it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In my state, New York State, it's the worst in the country. It's 45,000 signatures in 42 days. So I had to pay $80 every Saturday for 5 weeks to be able to stand there and ask people to sign a petition, because it's one of the few places where a lot of people gather. So I even got taxed petitioning to get our candidate on a ballot. So it's a problem here too, in a somewhat different way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But at least this tax on the local markets has been scrapped, the interest tax here. At least people should pay tax when they have sold the product. Then that's okay, because we have what we call value added tax. Maybe that is okay. But not even before you sell your produce, then you pay tax. That was very unreasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, these people that get the stalls have to pay the sales tax as well. So they get taxed twice.
Exactly. That's what we are saying. That we find one item is taxed like 3-4 times. We say this is completely wrong. Yeah. So we wanted to harmonize the taxes, and I've also called for reduction of the VAT, the value added tax, to be reduced, because now it's at 18%. Wanted to reduce at least to 14%. Like in Kenya, they have it at 14%. So these are some of the policies we have. Sometimes people call us as crazy guys, but we are not crazy actually. We are pro-people party.
So I think we have another question. Here it comes. Scout Trooper 164. For my final question, Frank, what is your plan to minimize or be rid of oil and carbon influence for Rwanda to help with the environment? Greens care about that a lot, so I wanted to ask myself.
Well, for the issue of the oil, it's something that you cannot get rid of here, because we don't have alternatives yet. And we still import oil from Saudi Arabia, from wherever, from those oil-rich countries. So it's still a challenge. And I am part of the Fossil Fuel Free Future parliamentarian group, and there are some US politicians who have subscribed to that. It's a parliamentarian call for fossil fuels free future. But we have been proposing that we shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. But the challenge is that people say, okay, if we stop using oil for our cars, what can we use for our cars? We talk about electric cars. So recently, Rwanda has accepted to reduce the taxes for electric cars. So if you bring electric car, it's almost tax-free. If it's a pure electric car, if it's a hybrid, you pay smaller taxi. So this is some of the things that are happening here in Rwanda, but we're still working hard to make sure that we get to fossil fuels. But some work to be done on that.
Well, for Greens here in the U.S., that brings up the idea of climate reparations and a global Green New Deal. And the U.S. cumulatively is the most responsible for carbon emissions. It's now, I think, the second biggest emitter after China.
Yeah.
But and I've argued this when I ran in 2020, that investing or granting money to a country like Rwanda to build out renewable energy and electrify, for example, transportation. So, cars, buses, any rails you have can be run on electricity instead of diesel and gasoline, is an investment in our future too here in the United States, because of, the climate crisis affects us as well. And so, the real problem for the poorer countries like Rwanda is that those countries that benefited from oil and all the carbon emitted have really got to pay reparations for the damage done to those countries that can't afford to make the transition without help. And that's where, it's one thing for us to, support Frank and what he can do in Rwanda, but another thing is we've got to get some things done so that countries like Rwanda have the resources to make the green transition.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, the US now is supporting to have a nuclear plant in Rwanda. So it's not something that's going to help us to have a green transition. So they'll talk more about that in words, but the actions is do something else.
Yeah, the promotion of nuclear power. One thing I noted when I was running for president in 2020, there's a nuclear power trade association. I forget its exact name, but it only made campaign contributions to one candidate, and that was Joe Biden. So as part of the it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, which they call a climate bill, but it actually has a lot for fossil fuels and nuclear. And it's a shame. I mean, there's so much we could be doing in this country, and we're still at what Barack Obama called all of the above. We're going to build renewables, but we're also going to drill, baby, drill. And we're now the biggest oil and gas producer in the world. We don't need Saudi Arabia because of fracking. And now we're trying to promote nuclear power, even though as an economic enterprise, it's a failure. The insurance industry won't insure it. And the nuclear power plants can't continue running without subsidies from the state. And Biden wants to keep building them. It's and not just here, but supporting it in places like India and Rwanda. It's, oh man, don't get me started. It's infuriating.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So, there was a question about Russian influence, and you mentioned the nuclear power. We also have these reports of what was called the Wagner Group, but is now being incorporated into the formal Russian armed forces, providing security for different states in the Sahel and the other Congo. And in return, they're getting concessions of gold mines, timber, and that kind of thing, which is a new colonialism. So, and then, we know what the West has done in Africa. It's been terrible colonization, but and neo-colonialism. But now you have Russia doing what it's doing with those countries, which are, military regimes. They're dictators. They're backing them. And then China, which is, like in the Congo, they have the cobalt mines, and the way they treat labor there is as bad as the Western multinationals. So maybe you could talk about, the prospects for Africa getting out of neo-colonialism as well as the old colonialism.
Well, neo-colonialism in Africa is not just about the US, but it's about the multinational organizations like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and others. They're the ones which are imposing conditions when they give money to African countries. Like the World Bank, when they give you money, they give you conditionalities. You do this, if you don't do this, we will not give you the money. And well, for me as a Democrat, I say that the conditions sometimes are very good because they tell African countries to be democratic, to open up political space, to have freedom and so on. So, but the governments in Africa, they call it that neo-colonialism, that the World Bank is another phase of colonialist. And yeah, so I would say that now another influence is these trade wars between China, the US, and now Russia, because as they are fighting for influence, and like China gives money for big projects without any condition. China will build all your roads, will build the stadiums, no question. What they need, they will take up everything. Even they take the soil, you can't believe this. Even the stones, they take them, they pipe them up in the plane and they take them. All our soil ends up in China, and then they have very good soil. And that soil, which they do from the roads, ends up with minerals. So it's not just soil they take, but they take also minerals in the soil. So that is China. They take everything. And the recent case was Zambia, where they loaned a lot of money to Zambia, and Zambia was not able to pay. Then they brought up a Chinese man to head the Zambian police force. So this was a big, they said now we need to control the police so that we're able to get back our money. So that is China. So the US also has its own other sides. So the US is also giving support here and there. But so you have seen that in the West African countries, people are tied up with US, with France, and they want now Russia because they think that Russia can negotiate. But the US does not negotiate with them. It just gives them orders. So these are the challenges that we have at the moment, and we are all victims. I mean, because there's a war between the global powers, between China and the US and Russia, and we become the victims here because they are all competing for natural resources from Africa. Because Africa, as you know, is which has fresh natural resources. So then people come to take them for free. They don't want to pay taxes for this. If you hear the war in Congo, 99% of the war in Congo is caused by the natural resources, by the minerals in Congo, because people want to take those minerals for free. They don't want to pay taxes, and they will support the warlords and so on. So like Congo, they have over 100 armed groups in Congo, which are all controlling one piece because like there's not good control by the government from all the parts. So the warlords control this area. They mine, they sell directly to whoever they want to sell. So they give someone minerals, gold, and they give them guns, or they give them gold and they get them food. So that's what happens in Congo, but also happens elsewhere. So it's a challenge for Africa.
Yeah, that's why they sometimes call that war in Congo Africa's World War, because there's so many foreign powers behind the scenes providing guns to the various militias with the ultimate objective of getting those minerals.
Yeah.
And that's what's led to 6 million deaths and 6 million refugees, biggest war since World War II. And which comes back to us. You said we're all victims, including us in the United States, because we wander so much on militarism.
Yes.
And, you know, that's what we do more than diplomacy, or you know, we seek to exploit rather than develop. And I don't mean we, I mean the big corporations who, you know, dominate our political system. So
Exactly.
we're in the same struggle. But we're coming up on the hour, and I really appreciate you coming on, Frank. And as you get underway in this presidential election, I kind of envy you. I mean, our campaigns here are constant; they never stop. As soon as the presidential election's over, they start talking about who's going to run next time, and they start raising money from the millionaires and the billionaires, and it just never stops. Whereas you have a defined period, like they do in the United Kingdom, which I think would probably be a better system, because when the election comes, then you focus on what the parties are offering and what the candidates are offering. Instead of being bombarded with it so often, you tune out because it gets tiresome. So in any case, you know, good luck. We'll be watching. People should know the European parliamentary elections are going on right now. They end on Sunday. The Greens are probably going to do pretty well, but so is the far right. And the question is, the center is falling out in Europe. So we got one result on Friday in the Netherlands, and the Greens beat the far right. The far right got the government in the last election, but the Greens got 8 seats, and the far right got 7 seats. So, you know, let's hope those kind of results come out of this European parliamentary election. So maybe we'll talk about that some next week at our next podcast. I don't have a guest plan, so we'll deal with questions and answers. There's been a lot of news. So that's next week. But again, Frank, thank you. Is there anything more you want to say to folks before we get off?
No, I'd like to thank you very much for hosting me on this show, and also thank all the participants on the show and for the questions they gave. Please continue standing with us, because we are standing for the same values of democracy, the social justice, economic justice, and for the welfare of the human beings in Rwanda, and of course for our planet. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Mm.
So we'll see y'all next week. Same time, same place.
Thank you very much.